All right, YouTube, what's going on? It's Mesa back at it with some Destiny. All right, guys, in this video, I am joined by the one and only Grandmaster, Datto. What's up, man?
Yo, yo, yo.
How's it going?
I'm doing all right, man.
Been a long time, dude.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on, sir. Well, we're going to talk about strikes. I've got a list of my top 10 strikes, and we were just talking prior to it. I was like, well, how do you kind of formulate your top 10 strikes? Because they all kind of are the same thing. They're just little differences here and there, but I kind of based it on the strikes when they come up, because I play a lot of weekly heroics. When they come up and I go, oh my god, I can't believe this one's coming up again. Or ones where I'm like, when they come up, I'm like, oh yes, I really like this strike. So we're gonna go through. Datto he has no idea what my top 10 are, so we're gonna start with number 10 and we'll work our way down to number 1, and we'll just kind of just riff off each one and what we like, what we don't like, whether he agrees or disagrees. So coming in at number 10, I'm gonna go with Shield Brothers. Shield Brothers, I think, but just because of the fact that the fight at the end is pretty tough, especially on the weekly heroics or even for the nightfalls, depending on what type of burn. I remember when it was a solar nightfall. It was a nightmare, literally. to do it.
It was rough on that mode. People actually had to like try. I remember during a Twitch stream, people were like, "Could you help me with the nightfall, please?" I'm like, I haven't heard that request in forever. It was that bad.
They really did kind of dumb down the nightfalls. Well, first off with the rewards in terms of, all right, am I really going to get a Vanguard Ghost Shell again? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then just the fact that you don't get kicked back to orbit, I think is kind of, it just doesn't make it as intense as it used to be, where it's like, okay, guys, we need at least one Warlock, hopefully to self-res in case we all go down, you know? With Shield Brothers, I like the strike just because it's like any other strike. We could all agree most of the strikes are kind of the same in terms of their format. It's kind of a wave, and then you go to another room and there's another wave. But I like the strikes that have a big walker or have a tank, in the middle of it. Just makes it a little bit different than just shooting up just a whole room full of ads. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel you on that.
All right, so that's number 10. Number 9, I'm gonna go back to year 1 and go with Devil's Lair. What do you think about that strike?
Okay. I might have placed it a little bit higher than that but that's, I guess, maybe more for nostalgia purposes.
Okay.
I like its very segmented parts. Each part has kind of like its own thing going on. You know, you have 3 waves, then you have the Devil Walker, and then you have Separate Prime. I mean, beyond that, it's pretty basic. There's nothing too complex about it, but that's because it's a year 1 strike. But it's probably just the nostalgia in me talking. Right. Maybe putting that a little bit higher. At least there's like 3 bosses in there. It had a lot of bosses. It had a lot of, technically 3, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you got the first room full of Hive and Fallen, and I don't know. Like that strike is one of those. Like I just remember it being really difficult when I was, low light level in year 1. And when we come up for a nightfall, and just like you said, nostalgia purposes, I would have rated it higher, but I've got a bunch that I like a little bit more than Devil's Lair. Don't worry, there's definitely some more year 1 strikes that will be in the top 5. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So number 8, I have Blighted Chalice. What do you think of that strike? The new one. From April.
The newest one. Really was not a huge fan of it.
Okay.
It felt very just kind of thrown together. It really, it did nothing for me. The final boss fight, at first, I didn't even know what it was because we killed him so fast. Now that I actually know what the final boss fight is, it's just, I'm not the most impressed with it at all. It's just spawning a whole bunch of blights everywhere, every 25% or so. I was not the biggest fan of Blighted Chalice. I would definitely put Devil's Lair above Blighted Chalice.
Okay. I think I like Blighted Chalice because I'm a sucker for the moon. I mean, anything that occurs on the moon, that's my favorite looking destination. I like how the first room, especially in heroic mode, it's a little difficult. You've got the tomb husks you got to get in the door.
Yeah.
The middle section's not too bad. The ending on the nightfall and even the weekly heroics, if I'm playing with randoms, can be a little difficult just in terms of all the blights and everything, but it just goes back to, I guess, kind of all strikes is we find an area, we use that one area, and we don't move from that area.
Right, we just hunker down. And,
right.
And I'm guessing your area is like sort of at the, I guess, the bottom of the loop where there's like actual ceiling and you can kind of hide. Yeah.
Yes. And when the Blight and the 2 Centurions or whatever they're called spawn in, I use Telesto on that because for that strike and that boss, I can't believe how far the Telesto goes in terms of its blast and where its projectiles stick to. I mean,
when you're shooting at like a 5-story building, right? it's bound to stick something.
Right. Yeah. So Blighted Chalice will be number 8. Now, number 7, I'm probably going to get pushback from people in the comments section, but I enjoy the Dust Palace. And this could be either the Taken or Cabal. And before I kick it to you, I'm going to say it's because it's the one strike where, and I know I pick on a lot of people for being what I call annoying sword dude, okay? Those are the guys that are running forward with their sword the whole time that I'm reviving the whole time. But I feel like Dust Palace is a great strike, whether it's Taken or Cabal, or with the Vex in the middle, where I could use my Raise Lighter the whole time and actually have a really good time and not have to just shoot things from far away. What are your thoughts on Dust Palace?
Dust Palace was actually my favorite year 1 strike, but that's because it's literally solely because the boss fight at the end actually had some sort of a mechanic in that they all had different shields and, you know, you had to kind of manage who'd you kill first and whatever, but even then that's like the slightest of mechanics. But otherwise, I don't mind Dust Palace. I think it's pretty fun. The final boss fight can be, you know, pretty intense if you're on, I guess if you're on Nightfall and it's just like a bad combination of modifiers, and so because I enjoy it more than I don't enjoy it.
Yeah, because once the flares come out, then all of a sudden all those majors come out. So if there's not a burn on it, it can be difficult, definitely for Nightfalls, because a lot of them have shields. So okay, so that's number 7. Number 6, I put in the Shadow Thief, Taniks. What's your thought on Shadow Thief?
Okay. I mean, I kind of liked that you're chasing him through this entire area and trying to hunt him down. But for me, it really didn't do too much. You know, the Devil Walker fight right in the middle was kind of a surprise the first time around. And, you know, it was fun killing the Devil Walker in like 3 Plan C shots that one week.
Right, what was Arc Burn?
Yeah. Arc Burn and Specialist or something like that.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it wasn't too much for me, or you know, it didn't really do too much for me. I thought it was okay.
Yeah. So what I like about that Walker fight is, especially on just regular weekly heroics, not Nightfall, no burn or anything like that, the Walker fight's interesting because you're in tight spaces. I mean, it's actually harder than, like, say, the Walker fight on the Shield Brothers or Sepix Prime, because you're constantly getting ads coming out of those doors, you know?
Right.
And a lot of them are majors, too, sometimes, if you play it on Weekly Heroic. And, yeah, you know, like you said, chasing him around the whole time. And the boss fight at the end, actually, I wish he kind of moved around a little more, because he starts off in one spot, we rocket him and snipe him a bunch of times, then he goes down to the bottom, and then we just all lay into him from there. So
right, exactly.
And it just kind of goes back to my thing where I love anything that happens on the moon. All right, so coming in at number 5, we're going to go back to year 1, and I was playing the Legacy of Strike playlist recently to get footage of all this stuff, and I still love and remember the Nexus. What are your thoughts on the Nexus?
I did like the Nexus. It made for a very, very challenging Nightfall, assuming that you didn't, like, stay upstairs or whatever.
Up top of an icebreaker?
Yeah, I remember trying to do solo Nightfalls, like, when it was Void Burn, and just doing, like, a 20-minute... oh my god, what's the final boss's name?
It's just
Secrius.
Oh, Secrius.
Secrion. Secrion. Yeah, and just trying to do that. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the Nexus. You know, the first beginning area got kind of crazy sometimes on Nightfall.
The 3 servitors.
Yeah, and even like the Vex room where they had the 2 Minotaurs and like the Hobgoblins out on that far ledge with the goblins with like the nuking Minotaur guns. That even I remember wiped me sometimes on Nightfall, just because I totally wasn't expecting all that damage. And then of course the path at the very end with all the goblins where you could just launch a super or a rocket. That always kind of like psyched you up to like nuke 20 20 goblins all at once. So that was pretty good. Yeah. I'd good placement for the Nexus.
Okay. Let's go on to number 4, and I know a lot of people don't like this one, but I do. Is the Will of Crota, Omnigul. What are your thoughts on Omnigul?
Yeah, I am part of the group that does not like it.
No, why don't you like it?
I just don't like the fact that every room or every so there's basically 4 sequences of fighting in that place, right? There's the very first room, there's the outside room, there's the ramp leading up to Omnigul, and then there's the Omnigul fight. And most of those encounters take place in very small areas. So like the first encounter, you're just basically in a small room and in a stairwell the whole time, like waiting for enemies to come to you. The second part is where you're waiting inside the building, waiting for everything to come to you. The next part is you're just sitting at the bottom of the ramp shooting everything. And then the Omnigul strike is you're just sitting in that really small room because it's impossible to actually be in the main room with Omnigul because there's so much stuff.
Right.
So I didn't like the way it kind of flowed. It was very kind of like start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. And there was just something about Will of Curta specifically that I just never really enjoyed.
Okay. Yeah, see, for me, the way I like it is I love room number 1 because we're all, usually my friends will go Night Stalker, Titan, and then I'll go Stormcaller, and we really piggyback off each other in terms of supers. So, once you take out the first wave, first round of supers comes in. When the Hive comes out, we just go ham with a Tether and then Storm Trance, and that makes for a fun experience. Then I like the second outside experience because we're sniping the whole time, or using scout rifles, and then when we actually get to Omnigul, yeah, you are right. My crew and I, we tend to go to that little cubby hole all the way to the left of her, and I'm just lighting her up with a Telesto. But lately, like in Weekly Heroics, I just been, as soon as the ads spawn in, I'll go right on her platform and just Storm Trance the wizards and then jump right back, because as you get her health lower and lower, the yellows start spawning, the majors, and then it gets hairy. But yeah, I don't know. I just always liked that fight for some reason. Okay, moving on to number 3. I put in the Undying Mind, and that could be either the Taken or a Vex version. What are your thoughts?
I actually do really enjoy the Undying Mind because of how many ads there are. Because it's that place is just basically non-stop supers, right?
Yeah.
It's just non-stop killing dudes, killing a lot of them. They're majors, but they're still kind of like, they're the goblin hobgoblin majors, so they don't have as much health as all the other kind of high tier enemies do. Like the stairway leading up with all the majors, that's just like orb generation city, and like just throwing Nova Bomb after Nova Bomb after Nova Bomb. And the final boss fight is just like more spamming supers, throwing bad juju, and you're just... I really enjoyed it because of just how much ad killing there were. It really is like... It feels like the most action-oriented strike because of how many ads there are and because of how many abilities you feel like you get to spam the entire time.
Yeah, that whole middle section I adore when you're tagging hunters, even strikers, strikers or sunbreakers, and also Night Stalkers, and you're just getting super after super after super, and it feels like the majors it's never ending. It just keeps more and more waves of them, And as for the final boss fight, I like it because first off, that epic music is blaring in the background, and I'm constantly having to move back and forth to get some snipe shots on it because the fact that the splash damage is so heavy. And then as the health goes down, all of a sudden a whole bunch of majors will come in. I'll pop my Storm Trance, just take them all down, make some orbs, and then my Night Stalker with that's in my fire team will then tether the Undying Mind. So yeah, definitely that's in my top 3. Okay, number 2 is going to be Winter's Run, and that could be... I'm going to say I like the Taken version more than I do the regular version. What are your thoughts on both of those? The regular, Taken or regular?
I'm pretty in the middle on both. I don't like Winter's Run as much, but once again, that's kind of a nostalgia thing because I know how frustrating it was on Nightfall trying to solo it back in year 1.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the it feels like one of the longer ones. But to me, nothing really hugely stood out about it. I don't know. I'm more interested to hear why you think this is number 2.
Well, for me, it's one of those. I love the end fight, and I like it because it's annoyingly hard sometimes, because it's not like the Blighted Chalice where you could stay in one area, clear those blights, and you're done. With the end fight, because he doesn't stay in one spot. He's not like the regular Archon Priest, the Taken version. He likes to go. Once you start getting his health down, he's out of there. He's all the way in the back, and then you got to take out those blights, so you can actually make your way to him. And once you do some more damage to him, then all of a sudden, boom, all the blights start spawning in. And when I do it with randoms, I find I'm there for a while sometimes.
It definitely does feel like a longer strike because the final boss is. The final boss is kind of harder than the other ones, even if the final boss itself is on Taken mode.
Yeah.
Almost the same as the Blighted Chalice. Like, isn't it like basically the same thing? It spawns a whole bunch of
blights,
blights and whatever, and you just have to keep killing them over and over. So,
right, but you're not. The thing is, you see, like in Blighted Chalice, like we said before, we go to that back area which has a ceiling to it. We stay under there. We only have one blight to take out. We don't even look at the other blights. Whereas I feel like with Winter's Run, Taken version, in order to get to him, we got to take them all out to be able to jump towards him. And then once we get to him, do some more damage, and also a whole bunch more spawn in, a whole bunch of ads spawn in. So in general, that's gonna be number 2 for me. So. All right, number 1, let's see. This is going to go back to year 1. And, I was firing up the Legacy Strike playlist, and this strike would not come up. So I had to go in and just fire it up regular. And that's going to be Summoning Pits. What is your thoughts on that strike?
It was very fast.
Yeah.
That's what I remember about it. It could be done in, 6 minutes? 6 or 7 minutes speed running. I don't know. I'm pretty indifferent to Summoning Pits. I never thought it was hugely, entertaining or anything like that. The only memorable thing about it for me was that you could do it really quickly, and then you do it to farm like bad juju strikes back when it was a bounty in year 1.
Yeah, we did a Nightfall duo commentary doing it when I think it was Solar a long time ago. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I like it for the sentimental value. I wish they had brought it to year 1. I mean, to year 2. I think if they would have made a Taken version, that would have been really interesting. Maybe even more interesting than Winter's Run. I like the whole, the first room when you got, the 3 waves because the door's shut, and then the whole middle section. And I don't know, the fight. I mean, obviously in year 1, a lot of people, including myself, would do the quote unquote cheese, where we'd stay outside the door and snipe him with icebreakers the whole time. But when you don't have that luxury, and you actually go into the room, it's a pretty intense fight. And I think if it was brought to year 2, it would be probably one of the more difficult ones. If, let's say they brought it to year 2 and they shut the door. Once you're in there with Fulgoth, you can't go out that door anymore. I think
which is how it should have been in the first place.
Yeah, I know. We would all just take turns with icebreakers, waiting for him to just line up so we can not move out too far for all those wizards and stuff to come in, which... what are you going to do? If there's any way we're going to find a way to cheese or exploit a strike or anything in this game, people will find out how to do it,
Yep.
With wrapping up, what's some of your favorite strikes that you like?
Honestly, I think the Echo Chamber is probably one of my favorites. Partly because I made that, I made my own raid boss, and the final boss of the Echo Chamber kinda ended up being a little bit like it.
I saw that.
It was sort of like a I called it situation. But it's also because that the final boss actually does feel like it has mechanics to it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, moving around. You gotta put the orbs in the chamber thingies to actually make him vulnerable. You only have a very limited window to do damage. And then the final segment where it's just kind of like you only have very limited windows, so you got to make the most out of your time where you can shoot the final boss. Plus, I kind of like dashing through the entire place, getting up to the final boss with the orb, because as a Titan, when you're doing Titan skating, you can go so fast with that orb, and it just kind of like it feels like a race, getting towards the end. But I would have to say Echo Chamber because the final boss actually feels the most kind of like a raid boss kind of scenario where you're actively having to do something and worrying about mechanics. the
Right.
orb, and specifically the Medusa stare.
Right. I like the fight. The only thing is I've got a lot of flashbacks and bad experiences with playing that strike with randoms. It feels like it takes forever, and then I'll get to the boss fight and I'll get someone that either doesn't realize you probably need to clear ads once you grab the orb to put in the thing, and then we end up wiping a few times. But I just put it on there. I didn't put it on there, I think, because of the fact of just my bad experiences because I play solo 90% of the time.
Yeah.
When I'm doing those strikes, I always run up with just some people that it just seems like it takes forever. And I'm like, guys, we should have been done with this thing a long time ago, you know? Real quick, what are your thoughts on Saber? I didn't put that one in there either.
Fallen Saber is, it's one of those that just kind of is there to me. One that I was actually surprised that you didn't talk about was Sunless Cell.
Okay.
I kind of like that one more than I don't, because I really like the atmosphere of the final boss. You're in this like super, super dark pit. I think they did, that sort of, they did the right feel for that. The feeling that I get from that strike is, I think they nailed kind of like the whole atmosphere. That was a horrible sentence.
Right.
They nailed the atmosphere of the final boss fight and the entirety of that strike itself. So that's one I enjoy more than I don't enjoy. But Fallen Saber is just kind of like, it's there. It's kind of cool what we're doing in Rasputin's, the whole war mine thing. Yeah. But it's just another one of those that's like, let's see how fast we can get through this so we can get to a different strike.
Yeah, Sunless Cell, I think I didn't put in there mainly because of my bad experiences with randoms when I do it on Heroic. I like the final boss fight. That's fun. Getting to that final boss fight with going through the different rooms and all of the shriekers and everything, and then I've got people that want to run past the whole room of shriekers. They end up dying, and then I'm in a situation where I'm trying to clear ads to get to them to revive them and everything. But then again, the strike overall, it probably should have been within my top 10, but it's more just from my experiences of not really digging it, playing it solo all the time. So
I gotcha.
Any other strikes you want to mention before we wrap up?
No, that's about it for me.
All right, man. Well, listen, thanks for coming on, man. Guys in the comments, let us know what your favorite strikes are, or actually which ones you don't like also. We want to hear from you. I'm sure you guys know who Datto is, but I'll link his channel in the description if you happen to not be a subscriber, but I'm sure you are. So, Datto, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks
really
for having me.
Appreciate
This was fun.
All right, guys, so that's it. Drop a like at this video only if you see fit. Follow me on the Twitter, and I'll link Datto's Twitter in the description also. And that's it. We're out of here like Vladimir. See you later, Datto.
See ya.